There's a moment in the dead of night. The silence of your home feels heavier, the darkness denser. Strange unease settles over your chest, like something is missing, like you're not entirely safe. I know how you feel in those moments. I've been there. It was on a night just like that. I discovered something that would forever change how I saw spiritual protection in my home. Before I tell you what happened that night, I need to ask you a question. Ever stop to consider why some homes seem to embrace those who enter, while others leave us unsettled? Why some environments fill us with instant peace, while others make us want to leave immediately? The answer is closer than you think. It has to do with something Padre Pio himself revealed to those closest to him. Something so simple, you probably already have it at home, but so powerful, it can literally call your guardian angel into your home. You know the story of Angela? A simple woman of humble means who lived in a small town in Italy. She sought out Padre Pio in 1952, desperate. She said her home had become a gloomy place. The children cried for no reason. Her husband came home angry every day. The plants withered despite her care. Padre Pio listened in silence. Then, with those penetrating eyes that seemed to see beyond the visible, he said something she would never forget. But it wasn't just words. He placed something in her hands, something small, seemingly insignificant, and gave her very specific instructions on where to place it. 3 days later, Angela rushed back to the convent. She was radiant. She said her home had been completely transformed. The children slept peacefully. Her husband smiled again. Even the neighbors commented that something had changed in that family. What Padre Pio gave her is exactly what I'm about to reveal to you. But first, let me explain why this works so powerfully. Have you ever noticed that some objects seem to carry energy? I'm not talking about superstition. I'm talking about something much deeper. In Catholic tradition, we've always known that objects can be vessels of grace, relics, medals, images, but there's something specific that acts as a true magnet for angelic presence. Padre Pio knew this better than anyone. He himself lived daily with his guardian angel. He spoke with him. He sought guidance. And one of the things his angel taught him was how to prepare an environment to receive constant celestial protection. The answer is in something that seems almost obvious once you discover it, but that 99% of people have never known how to use correctly. Something you probably have stored away at home, perhaps even forgotten in a drawer. I'm talking about the rosary, but not just any rosary, and not just any way. There's a very specific way to position a rosary next to the image of your chosen saint that completely transforms the spiritual energy of the environment. A way that Padre Pio learned through divine revelation, that he shared only with people very close to him. You need to understand that the rosary isn't just an object of prayer. When positioned correctly, it becomes like a spiritual antenna. Each bead represents a prayer, an invocation, a call. And when these 50 small spheres bended just right, they create a spiritual magnetic field that naturally attracts the presence of angels. Here's the secret that few know. It's not enough to simply hang the rosary anywhere. There's an exact position, a specific way, and most importantly, there's a preparation that must be done beforehand. Angela received that rosary from Padre Pio's hands. She noticed that it was warm, as if it had absorbed heat. Later, she discovered that Padre Pio had spent 3 whole days praying with that rosary before giving it to her. 3 days preparing those beads to become a direct channel with the divine. And you can do exactly the same thing in your home. But before I explain the complete process, I need to tell you about a detail that made all the difference in Angela's case. And that can make all the difference in your life too. She hung the rosary in the position indicated by Padre Pio. Something extraordinary happened on the first night. She woke up around 3 in the morning, not with that feeling of unease that always disturbed her, but with a profound peace. And she had the distinct impression that someone was watching over her family. Following days, she began to notice small miracles, situations that could have gone wrong, but resolved unexpectedly, protections that appeared at the exact moments, as if an invisible presence was anticipating the problems and warding them off before they reached her family. This wasn't imagination. This was exactly what Padre Pio had promised would happen. Because when you position a blessed rosary correctly, you are literally creating an anchor point for your guardian angel in the earthly realm. Think of it this way: your guardian angel is always with you, but he acts mainly in the spiritual realm. When you create a blessed point of material connection, you are making it easier for him to manifest his protection in the earthly realm as well, in the environment where you live, in the space where your family dwells. It's as if you're building a bridge between heaven and your home. There's a detail that makes this even more powerful. Padre Pio discovered that when the rosary is positioned next to the image of a saint of our devotion, the protection multiplies. The saint intercedes with the angels answer the call, and your home literally becomes a protected territory. You must be wondering what exactly that position is, how to prepare the rosary, what's the ideal time to do this, and above all, how to be sure it worked. Let me start with the preparation. This is fundamental. You can't just take any rosary and hang it up any which way. There needs to be intention, prayer, consecration. Padre Pio taught that the rosary should be charged in prayer for at least 3 days before being positioned. This means praying the entire rosary once a day for 3 consecutive days, always with the specific intention of consecrating that object for the protection of your home, cleansing of your heart from doubts or fears, purification of the space where it will be placed. Second day, you pray for consecration. Consecration of those beads to become a sacred channel. Consecration of your intention, that it be pure and sincere. Consecration of your family to angelic care. The third day, you pray for activation. Activation of the spiritual power contained within that rosary. Activation of the connection with your guardian angel. Activation of the constant protection over your home. During these prayers, you must specifically ask your guardian angel to bless those beads, to transform that object into a direct channel of communication, to accept that rosary as a permanent invitation for their constant presence in your home. On the third day, after the final prayer, you should hold the rosary for a few minutes in silence. Feel its weight in your hands. Notice if it's warmer than usual. This is a sign that the consecration worked. And offer a personal prayer, in your own words, asking that this object become a protective shield for your family. Only then is the rosary ready to be positioned. Now comes the most important part, the exact position. Padre Pio was very specific about this. The rosary must be hung not in front of the image of the saint, but to the right, at a height that aligns with the saint's eyes, as if the saint were looking directly at the rosary. And here's a detail that makes all the difference. The rosary should lightly touch the frame of the image, not completely resting on it, but lightly touching. This creates a physical connection between the prayer object and the sacred image. Do this correctly, something invisible but real happens. It's as if you're creating a spiritual circuit. Prayer contained in the rosary connects with the saint's intercession. The saint's intercession calls the angels. Angels respond by establishing their protection in that environment. Angela told me, years later, that in the first week after positioning the rosary as taught by Padre Pio, she began to have different dreams. Dreams in which she saw a golden light protecting her home. Dreams in which she felt a loving presence walking through the rooms at night. And it wasn't just dreams. Other people started commenting that something had changed in that house. Visitors said they felt a special peace. Children who were previously restless calmed down quickly. Even animals seemed calmer in that environment. But the most impressive was yet to come, because Padre Pio had taught Angela something more. A way to further enhance this protection. A specific prayer that should be said weekly, always on the same day, always at the same time. This prayer wasn't long, nor complicated, but it had an extraordinary power to renew and strengthen the angelic presence in the environment. It was like recharging a spiritual battery. And when Angela began to say this weekly prayer, the signs of angelic protection became even more evident. Dangerous situations averted at the last moment. Illnesses that healed quickly. Financial problems that resolved unexpectedly. Her family became known in the town as a blessed family. And it all started with a rosary correctly positioned next to the image of Saint Anthony, her patron saint. Now, let me explain why this works so powerfully. How you can adapt this teaching to your own home, regardless of your chosen saint. The key is to understand that angels respond to invitations. They don't invade. They don't force their presence. But when they are properly invited, they respond generously and constantly. The correctly positioned rosary acts as a permanent invitation. Each bead represents a prayer. Each prayer is a call. And when this call is made through the intercession of a saint, it reaches the hearts of the angels with special force. That's why it's so important that it be next to the image of your patron saint. Not just any saint, but the saint with whom you already have a relationship. The saint you place the rosary next to the image of this saint. You are, in fact, asking them to introduce your family to the angel. Like a formal introduction, like a request for specific intercession, for constant protection. The angels respond because they deeply respect the intercession of the saints. They know that when a saint intercedes for a family, it's because that family truly needs and deserves special protection. But there's another level to this process. Something Padre Pio called angelic anchoring. Because when you maintain this practice for a few weeks, something extraordinary happens. Your guardian angel doesn't just visit your home. They establish a constant presence there. It's as if that environment becomes a forward operating base of heaven on earth. A place where the divine and the human meet naturally and harmoniously. When this happens, you'll begin to notice changes that go far beyond protection from problems. You'll notice a spiritual elevation of the entire family. Prayers that flow more easily. Moments of reflection that arise spontaneously. A general feeling that God is closer. This happened to Angela, and it happened to dozens of other people who learned this secret through Padre Pio. And it can happen to you too. But now we come to a crucial point, because it's not enough to just know what to do. You need to know how to do it. And especially, you need to understand the signs that will show that the angelic presence has truly established itself in your home. Pause for a moment. Deep breath. Feel the environment around you right now, because what I'm going to reveal to you from this point on will completely change how you perceive spiritual protection in your life. The signs begin subtly. They always begin subtly. Because angels don't arrive with fanfare. They arrive like a gentle breeze that you feel. Can't explain where it comes from. The first sign Angela noticed was silence. Not the absence of sound, but a special kind of silence. A silence that seemed alive. As if the very air of the house had become purer, lighter, more sacred. Do you know this feeling? That moment when you enter an empty church and feel that you are walking on holy ground? That's exactly what begins to happen in your home when your guardian angel takes possession of the environment. This silence has specific characteristics. It's a silence that instantly calms restless children. A silence that makes visitors automatically lower their voices, as if they instinctively know they're in a special place. It's a silence that makes prayers flow more easily, as if the words find less resistance in reaching heaven. But that's only the first sign. The second is even more impressive. Worries begin to naturally diminish, not because problems disappear, but because you develop an inexplicable confidence that everything will work out. It's as if an inner voice constantly whispers, "I'm taking care of everything." Angela told me that in the second week, she noticed she'd stopped worrying about things that used to keep her awake at night. Problems still existed, but she felt a supernatural peace, knowing they were being resolved in a dimension she couldn't see. This peace has a very specific quality. It's not resignation or complacency. It's an active certainty that higher forces are working in your favor. It's waking up in the morning with the feeling that the day will go well, even when all external circumstances indicate otherwise. And they were being resolved, because her guardian angel was working behind the scenes of reality, moving circumstances, inspiring people, opening paths that previously seemed impossible. The third sign is the most beautiful of all. People begin to comment that her home has something special. Visitors say they feel good there. Children who are normally restless calm down quickly. Even people who don't have faith feel an inexplicable peace when they enter her home. There's a fourth sign that few consciously perceive, which is perhaps the most powerful. Household accidents practically disappear. Things that could fall don't fall. Dangerous situations resolve themselves at the last second. It's as if an invisible force is constantly preventing small disasters. Angela told me about a day when her 3-year-old grandson was running through the house and tripped right in front of the stairs. She saw the scene in slow motion, already imagining the worst. But inexplicably, the child jumped the first step and fell sitting on the second, without injuring himself at all, as if invisible hands had cushioned the fall. This happens because the angelic presence creates what mystics call a space where the celestial touches the earthly so naturally that even those who don't believe can feel it. Something few know, and that Padre Pio revealed only to those very close to him. There's a way to potentiate this presence, to make it even stronger and more constant. And this brings us to the weekly prayer I mentioned before. Padre Pio taught that every Friday, at precisely 3 in the afternoon, Angela should stand before her rosary and the image of her chosen saint for 3 minutes. Just 3 minutes, and say a very specific prayer. These 3 minutes had a very precise structure. First minute was dedicated to thanksgiving, thanking for all the protections received during the week, even those that went unnoticed. Thanking for the bad situations that were avoided, thanking for the peace that reigned. Second minute was dedicated to renewing the invitation, affirming that that home was open to the angelic presence, renewing the family's consecration to the guardian angel's care, reconfirming that the rosary remained a channel of divine communication. Third minute was dedicated to requests for the following week. Not material requests, but requests for specific protection. Protection against illness, protection against accidents, protection against negative influences, protection for each family member in their activities. Here's a fundamental detail that Padre Pio always emphasized. During these 3 minutes, you should lightly touch the rosary with your fingertips. Not hold it, just touch it delicately. This creates a physical connection with the consecrated object and potentiates the prayer. Main prayer was simple, but powerful. Saint of my devotion, I renew today the invitation for my guardian angel to dwell in our home. May this rosary continue to be the channel of your presence. May our family continue to be protected under your wings. Thank you for everything you have done for us this week, even without our noticing. Amen. But Angela told me that after a few months of saying this prayer, she began to personalize the thanksgivings. Instead of a generic thank you, she thanked for specific things she had noticed during the week. Thank you for protecting my husband in traffic on Monday. Thank you for calming my daughter during Wednesday's storm. Thank you for resolving that problem at work so unexpectedly. 3 minutes, once a week, at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, time when Jesus died on the cross, and which, according to Padre Pio, moment when heaven is closest to earth. Angela began to say this weekly prayer. Something extraordinary happened. Signs of angelic protection became even more evident. Began to notice an impressive synchronicity in her life. Things that fit together perfectly. Encounters that happened at the right time. Solutions that arose from where she least expected. It was as if her family's life had become attuned to a celestial rhythm. Something that will surprise you. Padre Pio revealed that this practice doesn't just work for protection. It also works for spiritual prosperity. Families who maintain this routine for a few months begin to notice a general elevation in their lives. I'm not talking about spectacular miracles. I'm talking about a constant and natural improvement in all areas. Relationships that harmonize, health that strengthens, financial situations that stabilize, problems that resolve themselves before they even become big. It's as if the angelic presence creates a protective field that naturally repels anything that can cause unnecessary suffering to the family. But there's an important detail you need to know. This practice is not magic. It is spiritual. Like every spiritual practice, it requires faith, constancy, and sincerity. You can't position the rosary today and expect your life to be completely different tomorrow. You can't say the weekly prayer only when you're having problems and expect it to work perfectly. Angelic presence responds to constancy, to fidelity, to the sincere invitation maintained over time. Angela maintained this practice for 40 years. 40 years saying, "Now let me tell you about Giuseppe, Maria Giuseppina's son. When she passed, he inherited the home, and he also inherited the rosary, still hanging in the same place his mother had put it decades before. Giuseppe wasn't a very religious person. He thought his mother's practices were old-fashioned. He decided to completely renovate the house, and the first thing he did was remove all the religious images and, obviously, the rosaries. He wanted to modernize everything. New paint, new furniture, contemporary decor. In his mind, he was freeing the house from what he considered superstitions of the past. He wanted to create a more rational environment for his family. In 2 weeks, the house had become unrecognizable, not only in the decor, but in the energy. Visitors who previously felt comfortable there began to feel an inexplicable unease. Some left earlier than planned, always with vague excuses. Others simply stopped visiting. The plants, which had always been vibrant in Maria Giuseppina's time, inexplicably began to wither. Giuseppe changed the soil, moved their positions, called a gardener. Nothing worked. As if they were losing the will to live. Even the family dog, a docile golden retriever who had always been calm, became restless and started barking at empty spaces, especially at night. He would spend hours staring at the corners of the room and barking softly, as if he saw something no one else could see. Giuseppe began to suffer from insomnia. He systematically woke up at 3 in the morning with a feeling of anguish he couldn't explain. Get up, walk around the house, but couldn't identify what was wrong. He only knew that something was. His wife developed inexplicable anxiety. She began to avoid being alone at home. Necessary, she would turn the radio up maximum volume to avoid the heavy silence that had settled in the rooms. Massive silence, completely different from the vibrant silence Maria Giuseppina had described. Children who loved playing in that house when their grandmother was alive, even in the first few days after the inheritance, now preferred to be anywhere else. Always invented excuses to go to friends' houses or stay out late. Family arguments, which were there before, became fights over silly reasons that quickly escalated. Constant irritability took over all the residents. It was as if the harmony that had always characterized that family had been sucked out of the house. That's when his oldest daughter, only 8 years old, asked a question that changed everything. "Daddy, why did Grandma's house become sad? Before, it smiled when we entered. Now, it's always crying." That night, Giuseppe called the town's parish priest. He recounted what was happening, and the priest, who knew Maria Giuseppina's story well, explained what had happened. "My son," the priest said, "you removed much more than decorations. You removed a spiritual protection that your mother had established for decades. Angels don't force their presence. When they don't feel welcome, they respectfully withdraw. And when they withdraw, other types of influence can occupy the empty space." Giuseppe understood immediately. For the first time in weeks, he slept peacefully that night, because he had finally understood what was happening. The next day, he looked for a rosary identical to the one his mother used. He found a statue of Saint Anthony, identical to the one he had removed. He followed exactly the instructions his mother had taught him as a child, but which he had forgotten. 3 days of preparatory prayer, each with its specific intention, specific positioning, with all the care his mother had always shown. And on the first Friday, at 3 in the afternoon, he said the renewal prayer for the first time. In a week, the house regained its former energy. His family felt peace again. The plants revived miraculously. The dog returned to sleeping peacefully. And Giuseppe became even more devout than his mother had been, because he had personally experienced the difference between having and not having angelic protection in his home. This story teaches us some angelic presence is not inherently permanent. It needs to be cultivated, maintained, constantly renewed through our faith and our practice. It's like a garden. You don't plant a seed and expect it to grow on its own forever. You water it, fertilize it, take care of it, and the more you care for it, the more beautiful the garden becomes. The presence of your guardian angel in your home works the same way. The more you cultivate this presence through faith and constancy, the stronger and more evident it becomes. Here we come to the most important point of everything we've talked about today, because perhaps you're wondering if it's not just suggestion. Angels can really dwell in our homes through such simple practices. Let me answer you with another question. Do you believe that God wants to protect you and your family? Do you believe that He has designated angels specifically to care for each of us? Do you believe that divine love manifests itself in practical and concrete ways in our lives? If your answer is yes, then you already have everything you need to begin. Because ultimately, this is not a matter of objects or rituals. It's a matter of faith, of a sincere invitation, of openness to receive the protection that God already wants to give us. The rosary is just a channel. Prayer is just an invitation. The saint is just an intercessor. But behind all this is the infinite love of God, manifesting itself through His angels to protect those He loves. And He loves you. He loves your family. He wants you to have a protected home, an environment of peace, a safe haven amidst life's storms. The question isn't whether this works. The question is whether you are willing to try, whether you are willing to extend the invitation, whether you are willing to open the doors of your home to heavenly protection. Maria Giuseppina was. Giuseppe, after learning his lesson, was too. And thousands of others over the years have discovered that when we do our part, God always does His. Your home can be different starting today. Your family can experience a protection that goes beyond anything material security can offer. Your home can truly become a little piece of heaven on earth. All you need is a rosary, an image of your chosen saint, and courage to extend and invite everything. Just maybe your guardian angel has been waiting a long time for this invitation. Perhaps they're simply waiting for you to open the door and say, "Welcome to our home." When you do, when you rosary correctly, you offer that weekly prayer with sincerity, you'll discover you were never. Let me give you some practical guidelines to get you started the right way. First, choose your rosary carefully. It doesn't need to be expensive or elaborate, but it needs to be new. Or if used, someone you trust and who is of good character. The important thing is that you feel a connection with it from the very first moment. Second, prepare the environment before placing the rosary. Perform a spiritual cleansing of your home. This can be done simply by praying Our Father in each room, asking that any negative energy depart, that only divine love remain. Third, be patient with the signs. Some people notice changes in a few days. Others take a few weeks. This doesn't mean it's working less for you. It simply means that each home, each family, has its own response time to angelic presence. Fourth, maintain consistency in your weekly prayer, even when you don't feel like it, even when it seems like nothing is happening. Consistency is what builds the trusting relationship, guardian angel. Lastly, but perhaps most importantly, keep your heart open to perceive the subtle signs. They are rarely spectacular. More often, they're small, everyday miracles that can go unnoticed if you're not paying attention. There has always been someone watching over you. That there has always been a protection greater than you imagined. And that your home, always had the potential to be exactly what God dreamed it would be. A place where heaven and earth meet in perfect harmony. Start today. Choose your rosary. Begin the preparatory prayers. Place it next to the image of your chosen saint. And prepare to discover that your home can be much more than just a place where you live. It can be your little piece of heaven on earth.